meeting for our February 3rd, 2022 Planning Board meeting, our 77th virtual meeting since the onset of the pandemic. I'm going to once again explain the procedures and participation guidelines for our virtual hearings. Speaker pre-registration and pre-submission of comments and exhibits is required. All participants must pre-register, and all materials or exhibits, if any, must be submitted by 12 noon on the Tuesday before the Planning Board meeting, as shown on the screen, as announced in weekly meetings, as posted on our website, and as clearly stated in bold red on our published weekly Planning Board agenda. Registered speakers and presenters may join the meeting with the link provided via email from the Planning Board office, or may listen or participate by phone utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. And of course, the public may continue to watch Planning Board meetings streamed live, or if you wish to become a person of record, you may sign up on our online web form. Please note the screen for instructions. Before we proceed, I want to make sure everyone knows who's present with us. We have the full complement of our Prince George's County Planning Board. We have Madam Vice Chair Dorothy Bailey, and we have Commissioners Washington, Dorner, and Giraldo present with us. Here in the County Administration Building, we have with us our Planning Director, Andre Checkley, and we have our Acting Planning Director, Derek Balaj. We have the wizard behind the screen, Ryan Cron, who's back from his ski trip, birthday ski trip, who's working all his magic with the video technology. We have Kenny Flanagan working the PowerPoint. If you need him to move anything along, please address Mr. Flanagan. We have our Senior Counsel, Peter Goldsmith. We have our Chief of Development Review, James Hunt. And I think that and then we have our wonderful technical hearing writer, Lee Kratka, who's back with us for today. As always, we commence our meetings with a moment of silence for those who have passed on in the intervening week. James Bowman, age 95, who was the father of Connie Taylor, who worked at the Child Care Center in Upper Marlboro, our Prince George's County Employees Child Care Center in Upper Marlboro. And also, he was the father-in-law of Sharon Bowman, who was also the director of the Employees Child Care Center in Glenridge. Within Prince George's County, we want to remember Lily Mae Sims of Lanham, Maryland. She is remembered for her contributions to the nursing profession and her service to the First Baptist Church of Glenarden and its ministries. She was the wife of Reverend Thomas Sims Jr., who was the pastor of First Baptist Church of Glenarden prior to the arrival of Pastor Jenkins. She was also the mother of Dwayne Sims, who was the founder of the Negro League Legends Hall of Fame, and Darrell Sims, who was a special assistant in the office of the Prince George's County Executive. We want to remember Cheryl Mitchell, who was the beloved teacher at High Point High School in Beltsville, who was found deceased in her classroom last Thursday evening. We want to remember the latest victims of the widespread coronavirus. We are now approaching 77 million cases in the United States alone, and over 917,600 deaths in the United States. 917,000 deaths in the United States. So I'm asking you again and again and again and again, do your part. Throughout the nation and the world, we want to remember Esteban Torres, age 91, former U.S. Congressman who represented California, who was a strong advocate for Latino rights. Chesley Christ, age 30, TV correspondent and former Miss USA. She made history in 2019 because it was the first time someone won all 5 of the major pageants. It was the first time that all major pageants were won by Black women. Moses Mosley, age 31, who was actor on the role of The Walking Dead. Now, it has been said that these two died, it appears that these two died from suicide. And I will remind everyone that these are very, very challenging times, and we don't know what's going on in everyone's personal life, but the pandemic alone is enough to really wreak havoc. And if you compound that with personal issues, it can be really trying and really devastating. So we want to remind everyone there is a suicide prevention hotline, and you can call. And if you see someone who's in need of help, please advise them to get help. And let's all work together to raise awareness of suicide and its prevention. There's something that you can do. And actually, a small act of kindness goes a long way. You never know what's going on in someone else's life. Howard Hessman is an actor known for his role as disc jockey Dr. Johnny Fever in the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Gene Clines, a Major League Baseball outfielder who won the 1971 World Series with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Morgan Stevens, actor known for his role as drama teacher on Fame, as well as his roles on Mod Squad, The Waltons, and Melrose Place. Hargus Pig Robbins, age 84, who was the pianist who played with artists such as Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Loretta Lynn, and Patsy Cline on some of the most enduring hits in country music history. Sam Lay, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame blues and rock drummer who played with Little Walter, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Paul Butterfield, and Bob Dylan. Jeremiah Stamler, age 102. He was a professor and researcher known as the father of preventive cardiology. He linked how diet and lifestyle play a fundamental role in heart health. We should all listen up. Jimmy Johnson, he made it to 102. He clearly knew something. Jimmy Johnson, 93, legendary Chicago blues and soul guitarist. Robert Bob Wall, age 82, martial artist and actor who appeared with Bruce Lee in movies such as Enter the Dragon. Mel Mermelstein, age 95, Holocaust survivor. He and his family were deported to Auschwitz concentration camp during World War II. He successfully sued a group of Holocaust deniers and prompted a judge to declare that many deaths were indeed factual. And John Zazula, age 69, co-founder of Megaforce Records, which helped release the first albums of Metallica, Anthrax, and other influential metal groups. Now, of course, we've missed some, I'm sure. So we extend our deepest sympathy to any of you who may have suffered the loss of a loved one. And please know that we lift you in our thoughts and open our hearts to you. If we may have that moment of silence now, please. Thank you. It is the month of February. It is Black History Month. You'll have an announcement on that later, but there's so many ways that we celebrate Black history, and it is part of American history. When I was growing up, we didn't teach that in schools, and it was not even incorporated into our history classes. So we had to search long and hard, to find out facts pertaining to Black history. And luckily, we had generations ahead of us who could share stories. But now it's easier to find out. But we have to do our part to let people know about Black African American history and all that has been accomplished. So we are embracing this full force. There's also American Heart Month. You heard me talk about the cardiologist who died at age 102, and the researcher who known as the father of preventive cardiology. It is American Heart Month, and it's clear that over 17 million people die annually related to heart disease and stroke. So we should do some research and take the steps to do what we need to do to take care of our hearts. We need to take care for health-wise, and it is also the love month. So you want to take care of your heart and emotionally as well. It is National Therapeutic Recreation Month. We celebrate the field of recreation, therapeutic recreation at our Department of Parks and Recreation. We do an amazing job with our therapeutic recreation courses and some of our other offerings. It is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. Nationwide, youth ages 12 to 19 experience the highest rates of rape and sexual assault. That's ages 12 to 19, the highest rates of rape and sexual assault. And 10% of adolescents report being the victim of physical violence at the hands of an intimate partner in the previous years alone. This is tragic. And there's a huge disconnect because 80% of parents feel that their teen has never been subjected to any kind of dating violence or abuse. So there is a severe disconnect. And many teens are reluctant to report it. So let's be cognizant of that. Again, it is February the 3rd. In 1882, on February 3rd, P.T. Barnum, the circus entrepreneur, purchased the world famous elephant Jumbo, who was the enormous African elephant born in the Sudan. Because he was one of, if not the largest, one of the largest elephants in captivity, he was named Jumbo. They named him Jumbo, and that is why we have such terms named after him, such as Jumbo Jet, Jumbo Size, Jumbo Baggies, Jumbotron, and so on and so on. Sadly, he was hit by a train in 1885, and I have to take a moment of privilege because he was then, the taxidermist then stuffed his hide, and he was on display for many, many years from 1889 to 1975 at P.T. Barnum Hall at my beloved Tufts University until the fire in the building, he burned down in the fire in 1975. And we all gathered around and saw the place go up, Barnum Hall go up in flames. 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified, giving Congress the power to lay and collect income taxes on any source of income. So there you have it, February 3rd, 1913. February 3rd, 1930, former U.S. President Justice William Howard Taft resigned as Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court for health reasons. He died less than 5 weeks later. 1959, musicians Buddy Holly, Richie Havens, and the Big Bopper and their pilot were all killed in a horrible plane crash following a concert. The plane took off in very wintry conditions, and they were all killed. And it became known as the day the music died, and was referenced in the song by Don McLean, American Pie, when they talk about the day the music died. So we were just playing that in here a little while ago. 1962, U.S. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy banned all trade with Cuba except for food and drugs. 1967, the young, talented Jimi Hendrix recorded his iconic Purple Haze. 1979, the Blues Brothers, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, went #1 on their charts with their album, A Briefcase Full of Blues. And you remember they kept that under lock and key, changed to Dan Aykroyd's hand. 1993 was day 1 of the federal trial of the 4 Los Angeles police officers who were charged with civil rights violations in the videotaped brutal beating of Rodney King. 2009, Eric Holder became the 82nd and first African-American United States Attorney General. And other announcements. So on Thursday, February 10th at 6:30 p.m., that's next week, the Department of Parks and Recreation is featuring the No Excuse for Dating, slide 1, No Excuse for Dating Abuse. And that is the Department of Parks and Recreation's Extreme Teens program that we will be producing in conjunction with the Prince George's County Office of the County Executive, the Prince George's County Department of Family Services, and the Prince George's County Office of Community Relations. It will be streamed live via WKYS on the station's website and also on Facebook and YouTube pages. And it's part of a national initiative to raise awareness and inspire dialogue and explore solutions for dating abuse in relationships of our teens and young adults. Anybody who has teens in their families, you need to be cognizant and be on the lookout because they may not tell you. And as I said earlier, statistics show that there's a disconnect because most parents believe that their teen has never been subjected to dating violence. So 26% of women and 15% of men experience intimate partner violence for the first time before the age of 18. This is tragic. We have to put an end to this. Next slide. Again, happy Black History Month, and the Department of Parks and Recreation is hosting a variety of in-person and virtual activities to celebrate African American heritage and culture. This year's theme and exhibition is called More Than a Month, commemorating 40 years of the Commission's Black History Program from 1982 to 2022. Each one has been fabulous and has built upon the previous year. So what started as just a grassroots event is just really magnificent, and we don't let this pandemic stop us. So you can visit blackhistory.pgparks.com to download a copy of the commencement poster, commemorative poster. It is just amazing. And that's done in conjunction with students who participated in our internship program over the summer. And you can also view a digital brochure of upcoming events and watch virtual events, performances, and programs online. Next slide. The Prince George's County Health Department and Office of Emergency Management continue to distribute 25,000 free COVID-19 at-home test kits each week at designated community centers and libraries within the county. There will be one box distributed per person, and you must be present. There's none of this, but my, nephew is at home, my husband is at home. You got to be present to get it. And they will give it to you for any person ages 2 and older. Residents are required to show proof of county residency, driver's license, utility bill, lease agreement to receive a test kit. And they will be distributed on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. and Thursdays at 8 a.m. while supplies last at designated commission locations. And the locations may change from week to week, so please check the website and the address on the screen for more details and a list of locations across the county. Finally, we also want to say congratulations to Christina Hartsfield of Community Planning Division, Placemaking Section, on the arrival of baby girl Ava. Mom and baby girl are doing well. Congratulations to the entire family. And we have been fraught with challenges in 2020 and 2021, and the new year started off with challenges as well. These continue to be very tough times as we continue grappling with stress, fear, loss of friends, loved ones, and we're just plain tired of the disruption to our lives. But we struggle and we push forward because we are resilient. We consult with the Prince George's Department of Health on a near daily basis, and the percent of positive test results, the infection rate, the average daily case rate are all at unacceptable levels. The numbers are going down, but they're still in what's called the critical stage in Prince George's County. For all of those categories. Omicron has proven to be far more contagious than the Delta variant, even if you are vaccinated. But if you are vaccinated, particularly if you are boosted, you are far less likely to die, far less likely to require a ventilator, far less likely to be placed in ICU, and less likely to be hospitalized at all. So that is the good news, along with the fact that the numbers are coming down, but they're not down yet. And there's been study after study after study that shows you that vaccinations alone don't provide nearly the protection that getting a booster shot will provide. So I implore you, please vax up, mask up, and get boosted, okay? And you do that for yourself, you do that for your loved ones and your colleagues. And meanwhile, we thank you and appreciate your flexibility, your cooperation, and your support as we continue our planning functions in a safe fashion. As we embark on today's hearings, let's embrace 2022 and remain thankful for our blessings. Let's step up our game. Let's increase our efforts to be kind. That kindness may prevent a suicide. That kindness will lift someone's spirits. That kindness is so essential. It's essential all the time, every day, but never more than during this pandemic. Continue to look out for one another. Continue to stay safe, stay strong, stay resilient. Get vaxxed, get boosted, and remain, by all means, remain ever hopeful as we continue our journey to a better tomorrow together. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is our draft minutes from January 27th. Is there a motion?
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion from Madam Vice Chair and a second by Commissioner Washington. Madam Vice Chair? Commissioner Washington?
Aye.
Commissioner Dorner? Okay, so something happened. And Commissioner Giraldo? You're muted.
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Okay, so the ayes have it 4-1. Thank you. And next we will proceed with our consent agenda. Is there anyone here to oppose the staff's recommendations on items 4C through 4E, or any board member who wishes to discuss? Is there a motion?
Move approval of items 4C through 4E on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff. Okay.
We have a motion by Madam Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Washington. Madam Vice Chair,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Vote aye.
and Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye, Madam Chair. Thank you.
The ayes, thank you. The ayes have it, 5-0. The next item, on our agenda is item 7, which is comprehensive design plan 0501-03, Parkside. Now, I'm just going to double check. I'm not going to read. We have a long CDP statement that it must be read for every comprehensive design plan, but I'm not going to read it this time because I understand we have a request for a continuance. So I'm just going to make sure that we have the folks that we need before we entertain that request. And there are a lot of people signed up. So Mr. Zhang, I see you there. Ms. Camp.
Good morning, Madam Chair, present.
Good morning. Marvin Joe Camp, are you on?
Present, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Mr. Rivera, are you on? Norman Rivera? No, he's not on. Okay. Now Rachel Leitzinger. Rachel, look under R. No. Adam Blau? No. So maybe they're not on right now because they Daniel Schagel? No. Okay. Sean Bruce? Nope. Danny Colton? Okay, so they're not on. And I, even though we have Sonia Ewing, Tom Burke, Dave Green, and Andrew McCrae, I don't think they're needed right now. So we'll just entertain the request, Mr. Zhang.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yeah, for the record, this is Henry Zhang Reserve and Design Section. Actually, we receive a continuous request from Ms. Camp to continue today's hearing to March 10th. I would let Ms. Camp to speak, but the staff has no opposition to the continuous request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Zhang. I also should have said, not only do we have the waiver of the sign posting and we have a request for continuance, but we also have proposed revisions to the conditions, and they will remain in the record if this is continued. Ms. Camp, you are on.
Yes, and if you would allow me just a minute. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board. I wanted to note that I am wearing red today in honor of American Heart Month and also in honor of our chair. She knows what I mean. And I'm not sure if you did it at last week's last Planning Board, but I also wanted to mention the passing of Hank Arrington and the role that he has played in this community, and hope that we will lift his family up in prayer. And with that,
we did mention that we had a moment of silence for him last week. Yeah, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
I am in agreement. We have submitted a request for continuance. We have a couple of outstanding issues with staff that we would like to be able to work through, and would respectfully request that we be able to be placed on the Planning Board agenda for March 10th, as Mr. Zhang noted. Thank you.
Thank you. So with no one else signed up from your team. Oh, Mr. Brown, are you on, Stan Brown?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Brown is sick and will not be able to attend today's meeting.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. They were all here in a support role, so.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know about. I didn't call Stan's name earlier, so I wanted to make sure I called the other names. So I doubt whether I'm going to look for a show of hands from our board, simply because I doubt that there are any questions. And if I don't see that show of hands, I'm going to entertain a motion to continue.
The request to continue, Madam Chair, to March 10th. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington and a second by Madam Vice Chair Bailey to continue this item until March 10th. Madam Vice Chair?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
But I'll say thank you for pointing out the American Heart Month, and I should be wearing a purple tie because my daughter's had 2 heart surgeries, and I spent well over 6 months living in ICUs and hospital settings as she got heart repairs and stuff. So definitely appreciate the public support for that. It's near and dear to my heart, even though I have a purple tie on and not potentially the red one I should have on today.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And yes, we did acknowledge that it was American Heart Month. It's so important to take care of our heart. And I think that the researcher that I mentioned, who just passed away at 102, said it all. The about 17 million people dying annually from heart disease and stroke. And it's just, we really need to take care of our heart in this Love Month. And it is Thursday, and I want to thank Ms. Camp for wearing her red. But you still have a chance, Commissioner Dorner, because tomorrow is Wear Red Day. But
Yes, well, I'm wearing it tomorrow too, Madam Chair,
I know.
but I thought I would wear it today.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying tomorrow is Wear Red Day, so he has a chance. We all have a chance to wear it tomorrow. We should. But I thank Ms. Camp for wearing it today because she's not going to be appearing before us tomorrow. So
Yes,
you're wearing
and I did want to
today.
say to the
And
commissioner, I lost my father at 54 to heart disease, so it's for me also very dear and near to my heart. So
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see, where's Commissioner Geraldo? Did I lose him?
I'm right here. Oh,
Okay.
it's my turn.
I'm asking you for your vote. Yes.
Oh, I thought I voted. Vote aye.
Okay, maybe. Okay. So the ayes have it 5-0. Thank you.
You're confused.
Okay. But
Thank
you're
you
not
so much.
on my screen. I don't know what happened to you.
I'm right here.
Okay. Well, we know that you know you're right there, but okay. So with that, thank you. And then we need a motion to continue item 8 as well. For the same reason. Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington and a second by Madam Vice Chair Bailey to continue this accompanying resolution to March 10th as well. Madam Vice Chair,
Vote aye.
let's see, Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Would I?
and Commissioner Geraldo.
Vote aye.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 5. Ms. Gupta, are you on? It is an extension request for a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-07062 Clinton View. Ms. Gupta, are you on?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Yes,
Hey.
present.
Okay, that's the only person signed up, so let's hear it for the extension request, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am Ridula Gupta with the subdivision section. Item number 5 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-07062 titled Clinton View. This preliminary plan of subdivision was approved by the planning board on February 7th, 2008, and it is valid through December 31, 2021 due to prior legislative extensions of the plan's validity period approved by the County Council. By letter dated December 2, 2021, the applicant requested a 1-year extension of the plan's approval. This is the applicant's first extension request, and if this request is approved, the preliminary plan of subdivision will be valid through December 31st, 2022. The subject preliminary plan of subdivision approved 8 lots and 1 outlot for the development of 8 single-family dwelling units. Section 24-119D of the subdivision regulations authorizes the planning board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of a preliminary plan of subdivision if certain criteria are met. For this preliminary plan, the criteria under section 24-119D5A apply. These criteria and their findings are listed in the staff memorandum. Staff found that all 5 criteria were met. Regarding criteria 1 and 2, the extension request was required to be filed prior to the expiration of the preliminary plan of subdivision, and this requirement was met. The preliminary plan of subdivision also remains in conformance with all applicable requirements of subtitle 27. Criteria 3 and 4 require findings that 2 years is not sufficient time to prepare the final plats, and that the applicant is not unduly delaying the filing of the final plats. As previously stated, this project benefited from legislative extensions enacted to address the nationwide recession. In fact, the subject property fell into a tax sale during that time. Since buying the property in March 2017, the current applicant has been proceeding in a timely manner to file the final plat in order to vest the development rights of the property, and has filed numerous applications which are required prior to platting the property. The applications which have been either approved or are currently in review are listed in the staff memorandum. The timelines of various applications and approvals initiated by the applicant corroborate the applicant's claim of efforts to move towards filing of the final plat, So staff finds that these criteria are also met. Based on staff's findings and the eligibility of a one-year extension, as found in criterion 5, staff recommends that the planning board grant a one-year extension for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-07062 Clinton View pursuant to section 24-119D of the subdivision regulations. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gupta. Appreciate it. Let's see if there are any questions by show of hands on the one-year extension. And I don't see any raised hands, so I'll entertain a motion to approve or disapprove the one-year extension.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of staff and approve the one-year extension for preliminary plan 4-07062.
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, seconded by Vice Chair Bailey. Madam Vice Chair.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
And Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning. I vote aye.
The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you so very much. The next two items on our agenda are going to be item 3A, which is legislation House Bill 404, and then the another extension request, item 6. So item 3A.
Madam Chair, members of the planning board, for the record, my name is Keeling Caspera, and I'm here with the General Counsel's office.
Are you on? Oh, there you are. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I can see you now too. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. So for the record, my name is Keeling, and I'm here with the General Counsel's office. I'm here today to ask the board to support HB 404 with amendment. I understand the materials were distributed yesterday, so unless there's any questions, I can jump into a summary of HB 404. So HB 404 expands a previously Montgomery County local bill to a statewide bill authorizing local authorities to decrease the maximum speed limit after performing an engineering and traffic investigation. And it also prohibits the local authority from implementing new speed monitoring systems where the speed limits were decreased. Under Transportation Article 11-130, local authority is defined as a political subdivision or local board or other body that under the laws of the state has authority to enact laws or adopt local police regulations. Due to the ambiguity of local authority under the transportation article, we recommend supporting HB 404 with amendment. The amendment would specifically list the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission in the bill, and it would give the commission the flexibility needed to regulate posted speed limits. So staff recommends supporting the bill with amendment, and I have Elizabeth Adams here with me on the call to help with any questions that you may have about this.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I thought so. Okay. We just normally say Kayleen, but okay, thank you, Ms. Cooper. And I don't see you, Ms. Adams, but I know you're present. So,
I'm here.
okay, wonderful. So you don't get to appear before us very often. So may I say it's very good to see both of you. I'm sure our senior counsel over here, Peter Goldsmith, is glad to have his colleagues joining as well. So with that, I'm going to turn to see if our board members have any questions of you. I know you have to go to Montgomery County as well. So Madam Vice Chair, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Washington, any questions?
Any questions?
Commissioner Dorner?
No questions, thank you.
And Commissioner Giraldo?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking.
Okay, so while you got your mic on, is there a motion? Commissioner Giraldo or anyone?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, seconded by Madam Vice Chair. Madam Vice Chair,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Vote aye.
and Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, Madam Chair. Thank you.
The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you. And may I also say, I announced this the other day. We had executive committee meeting on February the 1st, and our ERS meeting, Employee Retirement System, on February 1st, and executive committee. So we've been announced over and over that it is a Lunar New Year, a Chinese New Year, February 1st, commencing February 1st, and it is the year of the tiger. So let's be the eye of the tiger, and that is how we're going to seize this year and move on. So I want everyone to remember that. Just keep focused. We are the tiger. We are moving forward. We are pressing forward. We will get through everything. So thank you, and thank you to our council for coming to join us today to present House Bill 404. Have a good rest of the day. Good luck in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The next item on our agenda is Item 6, which is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-93078 Marlton, sections 18 to 22, which is known as East Marlton. I'm going to do a check and see if we have Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
Present, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Mr. Antonetti, there you are. Okay.
Good morning.
Okay. Mr. Horn, are you on?
I'm on, Madam Chair.
Okay,
I'm just
wonderful.
backing up just in case.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ferrante?
Present, Madam Chair.
Mr. Dunn?
Present, Madam Chair.
Mr. Patel?
Present, Madam Chair.
Lydia Soto Harmon?
Present, Madam Chair.
Chris Hatcher?
Present, Madam Chair.
And Jordan Parlow? We see you here, but we don't hear anything.
Present, Madam Chair.
Okay, wonderful. We also have an exhibit. Applicant's exhibit number 1 is the Girl Scouts Council of the Nation's Capital. It's the letter regarding the preliminary plan of validity period extension in support. Thank you. So, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, you are on.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell, Senior Planner with Subdivision Section. Item number 6 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan subdivision 4-93078, Marlton sections 18 through 22. This preliminary plan of subdivision was approved by the Planning Board on May 5, 1994, and it was valid through December 31, 2021, due to prior legislative extensions of the plan's validity period approved by the County Council, and prior to that, extensions granted by the Planning Board. By letter dated October 29, 2021, and an email dated December 31, 2021, the applicant requested a 6-year extension of the plan's approval. Supplemental letters dated January 6 and January 7 were also submitted, as well as a letter dated January 31, 2021, which is in the additional backup. This is the 7th extension request for the subject preliminary plan. The extension request is required to be filed prior to the extension of the preliminary plan session, and this requirement is met. If this request is approved, the plan will be valid through December 31, 2027. The subject preliminary plan approved 572 lots and 16 parcels for the development of 572 dwelling units. Section 24-119D of the subdivision regulations, as modified by County Council Bill CB 93/2021, authorizes the Planning Board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of a preliminary plan when certain criteria are met. For this preliminary plan, the criteria under Section 24-119D6 apply. These criteria are listed in the staff memorandum. Pursuant to Section 24-119D6A, this plan was valid for a 6-year validity period and is eligible for the requested extension because it has more than 400 residentially zoned lots. The property is in the rural residential, one-family detached residential, and townhouse zones. Pursuant to Section 24-119D6C, an extension of up to 6 years from the expiration of the preliminary plan may be granted by the Planning Board if at least one of the 3 criteria in Section 24-119D6B, subsections Romanet 1 through Romanet 3, is met. Staff did not find that any of the criteria of Section 24-119D6B were met. For the first criterion, staff found that public infrastructure, which was determined to be the developer's responsibility, has not been constructed by the developer in order to accommodate all stages of the development. The applicant did not cite in any of their letters any examples of infrastructure which has been constructed, and areas of the site, like the one on this cover slide, show that nothing has been constructed on the site since the approval of the plan in 1994. As the applicant points out in their January 6th letter, in order to reach the site, infrastructure must be constructed to cross existing Cutco and railroad right-of-way, as well as stream and wetland areas. So far, the project has been unable to overcome these obstacles. For the second criterion, staff found that the developer did not proceed in a diligent manner to complete the development. The current applicant, Brookfield Washington LLC, is the contract purchaser of the property, and the current property owner, the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital, or GSCNC, is not a developer, as they have taken care to state in their letters. Therefore, when I speak of the developer's failure to proceed diligently, I must speak of the previous property owner and developer, Lake Marlton Limited Partnership, or LMLP, which held responsibility for the project between its inception in 1994 and 2019. LMLP last obtained an approval related to the project, a set control plan, in 2016. Before that, the previous approvals they obtained were spread over what staff would consider to be an excessively long period of time. 12 years elapsed between approval of the preliminary plan in 1994 and approval of the site's 2 detailed site plans in 2006. Detailed site plan amendments were approved in 2009 and 2014. However, these amendments were of limited purpose, acting to reapprove the original plans, which had expired, and add additional architectural models, and eventually merge the 2 detailed site plans into one. The detailed site plans are now 15 years old, with the most recent amendment occurring 7 years ago, and they expired again at the end of last year. Only between 2012 and 2016 did the applicant obtain a handful of approvals from the Department of Permitting, Inspections and Enforcement, and the Maryland Department of the Environment related to the site infrastructure. Yet despite getting these approvals, LMLP ultimately chose to leave the project by donating the land. Altogether, the preliminary plan is now 27 years old, with no development activity over the past 5 years. It is clear from the January 7 and 31 letters provided by the GSCNC that within the past couple of years, the organization has exercised due diligence related to sale of the property, as well as to accepting the land as a donation from LMLP. However, the GSCNC's actions were to allow transfers of the property and were unrelated to pursuing the approvals and entitlements needed to allow development of the property. The applicant contends that before the site can be developed, it must be economically viable to construct the site's costly infrastructure, and staff does not dispute this. However, staff does not necessarily agree with the applicant's contention that the 2007 to 2009 nationwide recession, as well as the ongoing global pandemic, have been the cause of the site so far being uneconomical to develop. This is, one, because the preliminary plan was valid for an extended period of time before the recession began, yet did not proceed to development during that time. And 2, because LMLP left the project in 2019, well after the recession ended, but before the pandemic began. Regardless of what role the pandemic and recession may have played in delaying development of the property, 8 legislative extensions were approved by the County Council between 2009 and 2020 to address delays caused by these events, and the project benefited from all of these extensions. If it has not been possible to develop the project within the past 12 years since the recession, or within the past 27 years since the preliminary plan was approved, but it is possible now, it would be appropriate to renew the project with a new preliminary plan session, so the proposed development can be properly tested for adequacy and not have to rely on antiquated findings. Doing this will ensure the development will be both adequately served by and adequately contributing to county infrastructure and services in accordance with current regulations. For the third criterion, the applicant has not alleged that a staging plan applied to the approval cannot be met as a result of government failure to extend necessary services or infrastructure. Staff also finds that this criterion does not apply. Based on staff's findings, staff recommends disapproval of the 6-year extension request for preliminary plan section 4-93078, Marlton sections 18 through 22, pursuant to section 24-119B6C of the subdivision regulations. This concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. I'm just checking to see if there are any questions for you. Madam Vice Chair?
No questions.
Commissioner Washington?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dorner?
Yeah, a quick question. 6 years is a long time, especially given the series of extensions that have been requested. Did you talk with the applicant about maybe like a 1 or 2 year extension, like we've been typically kind of granting for these sorts of projects? Because like not much has been done. And if the intent is to sell with sort of vested rights or something, then maybe that would be the shorter time frame might be a little bit more reasonable. Did you guys have that kind of a conversation?
I think that was their original request, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not.
Yes, they originally requested a 2-year extension and then changed it to a 6-year extension. But we did not have a conversation specifically about how many years would be appropriate now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The criteria is the criteria. You may be correct, Commissioner Dorner, but we'll and maybe that's more palatable given that it was approved in '94. I don't know, but we'll see what the applicant has to say about meeting the criteria as well. Commissioner Giraldo, any questions?
I share in Commissioner Dorner's comments, especially when we think about the issue of transportation and traffic. That's a concern I have. But I'll wait for any further questions. I'll wait until the applicant makes a profit or presentation.
Okay. Okay, thank you. With that, we're going to turn to Mr. Antonetti.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Robert Antonetti Jr. with the law firm of Shipley & Horn, PA. As you heard, I do have with me my esteemed partner, Arthur J. Horn, and our senior land use planner, Mr. John Ferrante, both with Shipley & Horn. Today, we're here on behalf of Brookfield Washington, LLC, as you heard, the contract purchaser of the East Marlton property. You also heard that the current owners of the property are the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital. Today with us, we have Mr. Neil Patel from Brookfield Washington, LLC, Vice President of Land Development. We have Mr. Ken Dunn from Soltez, the civil engineer on the project. We have Mr. Chris Hatcher, my colleague, attorney for the Girl Scouts. We have Ms. Lydia Soto Harmon, Chief Executive Officer for the Girl Scout Council, the nation's capital, and we have Ms. Jordan Parklow here as well on behalf of the Girl Scouts. I would like to thank Mr. Diaz-Campbell for his review and presentation, but while I have incredible respect for Mr. Diaz-Campbell, we disagree with the staff recommendation in this case on this extension request. So first, East Marlton. East Marlton, just a little bit of history, is part of the very large Marlton community, which is located south of Upper Marlboro. It's been developing since the 1970s. It has been developed with thousands of residential units. It's a very large project. It's zoned RPC, Residential Planned Community. East Marlton is one of the final sections of the overall Marlton project. East Marlton in totality is approximately 431.5 acres. This preliminary plan is for 181.69 acres within that project. So it's essentially phase 1 of East Marlton. It is approved in this preliminary plan for 572 dwelling units, as you heard in the staff presentation. The property was previously owned by Lake Marlton Limited Partnership, which developed the surrounding parts of the Greater Marlton project. Now, Lake Marlton, as I call them, the previous developer, previous owner, had done significant things to advance the development of the project from an approvals perspective. We've heard some of them. In our letters that are in the record, we referenced some, particularly in our letter dated January 6, 2022. These included road dedication plats, which dedicated Heathermore Boulevard. And I will get back to Heathermore Boulevard because it's a significant component of the development of this project. There was also a road dedication of Heathermore between Grand Haven Road and Ricker Road. There were multiple detailed site plans that were revised and approved in as late as 2014 and 2018. Let me add, these detailed site plans were approved. They were valid a little over 4 weeks ago. So it's not as if they were stale to the point that they hadn't had any validity in any recent time. up until a little over 4 weeks ago, they were still valid. There are some sediment control plans for Heathermore Boulevard, which were approved. Sediment control plans for a potential railroad tunnel, which I'll get to in a minute, dealing with Heathermore Boulevard. There was the Parent Stormwater Management Concept Plan. There was a Heathermore Boulevard Phase 1 Stormwater Management Concept Plan. An MDE wetland permit, which was modified and extended numerous times. Storm drain and paving plans for infrastructure, which included Heathermore Boulevard and East Marlton Avenue. There was erosion and sediment control plans approved for Section 18. Erosion and sediment control plans for Sections 19 through 20. And this overall preliminary plan is for Sections 18 to 22. And there were numerous erosion and sediment control plans all the way through Section 22. There was a culvert plan for infrastructure for Phase 2 of the project. Storm drain and paving plans for Section 18 West. Storm drain and paving plan for Section 18 East. Storm drain and paving plans for Sections 19 through 20. And it goes on and on. I mentioned that to show that this was an active project. In the 2000s, and leading up to the donation, there was activity happening, extensions happening, valid plans. Some had expired, yes, but a significant amount of energy and finances must have been put into these plans to bring East Marlton to fruition. Now, Section 24.119 D6B Romanet 2, that is the criterion of approval which is germane to this analysis today. This is what it states. The developer has been proceeding in a diligent manner and has been unable, through no fault of the developer, to complete development within the time frame specified. In this case, the developer.
Mr. Anthony, I just want to make sure you said 24-119 D what?
D6B Romanet 2. Okay,
thank you.
And you're welcome. And the codification of that criterion has changed recently. There was some legislation at the end of the last legislative session of the council, which made some modifications to it. But I believe that is the correct reference. Again, the key word in that criterion is diligent manner. What does diligence mean? Now, as you're aware, the Girl Scouts were gifted the property as a charitable donation in late 2018, essentially 2019. It was in December of 2018. Their counsel, Mr. Hatcher's here, as well as their CEO, and they'll provide testimony regarding this donation and their efforts to keep the project moving forward. Now, I read that criterion, and something stuck out at me with Mr. Diaz-Campbell's presentation. He stated that the developer in this case was Lake Marlton Limited Partnership, and they hadn't carried this through to completion. And what we're here today actually is it's the Girl Scouts. They're the owner, and for the purpose of this analysis, it's what efforts that they did after they acquired the property. Do those efforts qualify as diligence? That's what we contend is the question at hand. Now, the staff report states on page 4 that further, Lake Marlton Limited Partnership's decision to abandon the project and donate the land in 2018 is not easily explained by the recession or the pandemic. So let me offer an explanation, although we didn't represent Lake Marlton Limited Partnership, but I think it's somewhat apparent of what circumstances may have led to this not being completed. And this focuses on Heathermore Boulevard, as I mentioned earlier. East Marlton has only one way into the site. One. It's Heathermore Boulevard. And to extend Heathermore Boulevard from West Marlton into East Marlton, you have to cross Pepco power line, underneath it, I'm sorry. You have to cross a CXF rail line.
Hold on. Would it be helpful if we go to the PowerPoint and can you guide Mr. Flanagan here for what that might?
Yes,
can you direct him to the appropriate slide that might work? I have him here too.
Actually, slide 1 may work. Is it possible to zoom? If you move your cursor to the left, you'll see the power line. Right in there. If you could zoom right in that area, you can see the platted road, and it shows these features a little bit more. Yes, I think that'll be good. Thank you so much. Oh, if you could go back up a little bit. Yes, perfect. So you see the solid black lines, but no, from the aerial, no road construction. I will add, so that is Heathermore Boulevard. To the left of the power line, that is the power line property. To the left of the power line is the extent of which Heathermore Boulevard has been extended. That road was under construction, began in 2016, we believe, and through 2017 to support the West Marlton development, which is shown on the aerial image that you have. When you proceed to the right, you'll see the Pepco power line, which is a high tension line. Right-of-way was secured through that power line to allow for access into East Marlton. But if you continue to the east or to the right of this image with the panning, you'll see another series of black lines. That represents the parcel of land owned by CSX. That is, that land does not have right-of-way across it. Therefore, it prevents a connection of construction of Heathermore Boulevard across that railroad track. Nonetheless, in order to construct a connection across the CXL railroad track, first, if you either have to do an at-grade crossing or you have to do a bridge and tunnel combination. An at-grade crossing pursuant to Department of Transportation specifications, if you have one new at-grade crossing on this rail line, you're supposed to close 3 other at-grade crossings, which is a very hard thing to do. In the alternative, what you're left with is building a bridge over the tracks and a tunnel for which the rail line can continue unimpeded. And that is the very likely scenario on which to do that. You still need permission and right-of-way rights to go across the CXL railroad tracks, which you don't have right now. But that is a negotiation that will occur and will have to happen in order to make that connection. Nonetheless, Heathermore Boulevard, as it sits right now, does not have a continuous right-of-way in order to complete access. That is beyond the control of this property owner. It's beyond the control of our client, Brookfield, but we are excited about the opportunity to finalize a negotiation with CSX and to get that infrastructure put in. If you continue with Heathermore Boulevard to the platted area, you also cross right there several significant streams and wetland areas that need to be crossed with culverts. These aren't your typical corrugated steel metal culverts. These are concrete culverts, which are double box culverts, which are essentially bridges. They are significant. They are very expensive. They require permits, wetland permits, etc. And then Heathermore continues where you see platted there, there's a roundabout. In our letter, we stated preliminary cost estimates because Brookfield right now is doing its due diligence. We think the market is recovering significantly with house values to support the extension of this infrastructure. But we're still in due diligence, and we hope to come out of that moving forward as discussed. But the cost estimate for Heathermore, again, through this landlocked situation, if we're able to overcome it, and we believe we will be, the CSX tunnel and bridge will be about $10,776,000 and change. The twin culverts I mentioned will be $8,619,000 and change. The Heathermore street construction, $7,479,000 and change. Roughly $27 million. That figure's repeated. $27 million to extend the only road into this site. That is unbelievably high. You've heard other extension requests that I've been involved with, and I've heard some others. But for example, Locust Hill, realigning and rebuilding Leland Road, getting those approvals, which was part of their extension request for, again, another preliminary plan. That roadway was roughly $7.5 million. Significant. It took a long time to get done. This is $27 million potentially to extend this one road into the site. And until it's done, this property is landlocked. So, that's a ton of money for anybody, let alone the Girl Scouts. I mean, as one of my colleagues told me, that is a lot of cookies to sell in order to support the extension of this roadway. But the Girl Scouts did obtain this property in December of 2018. It did have value. It had the entitlements. It had the preliminary plan. It had the detailed site plans, again, which expired roughly 4.5 weeks ago. But what did they do when they obtained it? Well, from their letters, we know that they negotiated a gift agreement with the donor. And in that gift agreement, there was provisions that required the donor to maintain bonds that were placed on the property. We believe that that's been done, particularly dealing with a recreational facilities agreement, dealing with numerous recreational amenities that the Lake Marlton Limited Partnership had to put in place, both on this property and the neighboring Marlton sections, which they developed. They performed due diligence. They studied the property. They obtained an environmental assessment for the property. They performed a title review. Then COVID hit. COVID changed everything. We've heard today in this, in the opening remarks, and different points throughout this. I believe, Madam Chair, is this you said the 71st virtual planning board hearing?
No, I think we said 73rd.
73rd. And I stand
77? Oh, 77. Sorry, 77. I'm sorry.
I mentioned that, but that is a significant change. It hit hard, and basically everything shut down. They also hired a top broker to pull together a team for them in terms of marketing this property and putting it in a position to move forward. The staff report alludes that these things don't represent diligence. Well, first of all, you need to look at it from the perspective of the owner, who is the developer for purposes of this analysis under 24-119. It's not the previous developer. So given what the Girl Scouts are and who they are and how they received this property, they took all reasonable steps in order to put this in a position to move forward and be completed. And unfortunately, that's evidenced by the contractual relationship between Brookfield Washington, who's now here asking for an extension in order to be in the best position to move this forward. So diligence, that's the term. What does diligence mean? Well, Webster's, I don't believe I'm doing this, Webster's defines diligence as a steady, earnest, and energetic effort. So I would say that in this situation, the question is whether the things that the Girl Scouts did to evaluate and study the property, arrange for the donor to maintain bonds, and aggressively hire a top broker to find a buyer and partner to fund development costs qualifies as diligence. We believe strongly that the answer is yes. And the actions of the Girl Scouts represent a diligent effort to advance the development of the property, taking all reasonable steps to find a partner that can complete the development. Again, $27 million just to enter the site, which is otherwise landlocked without that connection. So the market shows strong signs of recovering. It does. The Great Recession, we've all lived through it, was significant. It pales in comparison to COVID. If we remember how COVID was, we couldn't leave our homes. We couldn't go out and do daily things. We couldn't be with one another. We're on a virtual hearing now. I had to get bootleg haircuts for my daughter for a year. All these things happened, and we made it through, thankfully. Now there's light at the end of the proverbial tunnel, and we're in a position now where we plead with the board, please don't stop this opportunity now when we're right on the precipice, what certainly our client would say, through its due diligence, of having a market that would finally support the extension, the overcoming of this landlocked situation and extension of Heathermore Boulevard. The legislative extensions that were in place, which are referenced in the staff report, were intended to achieve results where plans were extended to allow for a market recovery because of the terrible impacts of the pandemic. I would ask the board to take administrative notice of CD 74 2020, in which there, and at your leisure, you can read all the recitals dealing with it. I'll just read a few in the whereas recitals. Whereas the real estate finance sector of the economy, real estate developers, home builders, and commercial, office, and industrial developers are still adjusting to the current national and international real estate market in light of COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas, as a result, the development community still faces uncertainty as to market demand as it relates to financial institutions that lend money to property owners, builders, and developers, and will experience substantial erosion of collateral and depreciation of their assets should approved preliminary plan approvals be allowed to expire. And whereas the process of obtaining planning board, development review, and zoning approvals for subdivisions detailed site plans and specific design plans can be difficult, time-consuming, and expensive for both private applicants and public bodies alike. These are the reasons of why the council legislatively extended every valid plan. We should not be in a position where this project is somehow pejoratively thought of or negatively impacted by the fact that they took advantage of that. Now that legislation has achieved its goal, it has carried this project forward, and others, has carried this project forward to the point where, as my client contends, there is a market shift. And what do we mean by market? We mean what value do the residential units represent? And does that value justify the economic expense for this for the infrastructure, including the $27 million extension into the site? We feel that the property is better positioned than ever before to allow that to happen. So the exorbitant cost of this infrastructure for East Morrilton, the fact that the project is landlocked, the fact that the ongoing pandemic are all beyond the control of the current owner. The expiration of this plan will also impact the potential value of the land to the Girl Scouts and potentially undermine the charitable donation. I'll let them speak to that. For these reasons, we strongly urge that the planning board exercise its discretion. You have the discretion under 27-119 D6B Romanet 2 and agree that the Girl Scouts exercise reasonable diligence regarding the development, and through no fault of their own, they've been unable to complete the development. Further, we ask that the board extend the validity period of the preliminary plan. We asked for 6 years. We asked for 6 years because the law was modified after January 1st, based on the last council session, to allow for projects of this size to go for 6 years. We're certainly open to consideration. We did ask for 2 years initially. I would state that given what I mentioned in terms of the crossings and the permits involved, 6 years would be our preference. In the alternative, I think a minimum of 3 years would allow for us to navigate through those hurdles. Brookfield, that is, to navigate the hurdles to get to a point where we can finally plat this. But for all these reasons, we urge your support of an extension. We do respectfully disagree with staff. I please ask you to look at this from the perspective of the Girl Scouts and what would a reasonable person do in exercising diligence under these circumstances. Again, I thank you for your consideration. We're here to answer any questions. I will yield to Mr. Hatcher and the witnesses that come from the current owner at this point, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, take a deep breath now, Mr. Antonetti. Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to ask our board if they have any questions of you before we go to Mr. Hatcher and everyone else, okay? So, Madam Vice Chair, any questions of Mr. Antonetti?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Washington?
I don't have any questions, but thank you, Mr. Antonetti. Very, very well put forward. I appreciate it. And I'm particularly sensitive to the plight of the Girl Scouts, who are not developers and are not generally here with us on Thursdays. And so even before hearing your testimony, I certainly appreciate, just based on your letter, Ms. Soto Harmon. I had to look down to make sure I got it right. There's certainly been a lot of due diligence taking place that many nonprofits would not even think to do. So I'm probably tipping my hat in hand, but I just felt the need to say that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. And Commissioner Dorner?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. I'll just say that, yeah, I think the letter was helpful. I don't think it's a really good excuse though to say, hey, we're not a developer, so we need more help. Because I can't say, hey, I'm not a baker, but I want to sell cookies. I don't believe those things go hand in hand, but there are other exceptions and other extenuating circumstances that we can consider within here. And I do want to just point out, I guess it's not, maybe it's sort of a question, Mr. Antonetti, in one of your comments, I was looking through the backup and I didn't see any evidence to kind of help with this. You made a comment that it would take a lot of cookies to sell, and I don't think you actually submitted any cookies for consideration on this matter, but maybe you can clarify if I'm mistaken, because I checked extensively and I didn't see anything in the record to indicate that we had received those. That's actually a joke. I'm kidding. But I did want to ask on a serious note. You said 2 years that you had originally asked for that. So why? But then you came back to the very end and your concluding remarks said, but maybe we want 3. Why 3 instead of 2?
Certainly.
It seems like it's kind of excessive, and then it kind of gets out of hand for all other kind of cases, because we're going to have everyone else who comes in and makes similar arguments and asks for 6 years. So I'm looking for like a reasonable explanation of why 2 or 3 would be okay instead of 6.
Sure. Thank you for that question. So, with regards to 6, as I mentioned, 6 became an actionable request by the planning board by legislation, by a change in the law, which took place January 1st. So we had to make our request before the end of the year. At that time, 2 was the maximum number of years you could request in one single extension. So our letter reflected 2, the maximum. We updated that request to 6. I will add that in terms of rationale for 3, because we're certainly not asking the board to be arbitrary, and if they're considering and hopefully support an extension request to just pick an arbitrary number. But I will say that in furtherance of Brookfield's diligence in the study of this and preparing just for this hearing, we've revealed even more of the challenges. We've understood them and grappled with them more, particularly for the extension of Heathermore Boulevard. And being in the development field, representing other projects, understanding the challenges with wetland permits and crossings in particular, dealing with public utilities and other public transportation entities such as CSX, or that's a private one actually, but Pepco, for example, and getting permission to go under those high tension power lines. That can take time, and that coupled with the other things we need to do to get to plat, which we'll get there if Brookfield moves forward. 3 years would be, I think, out of an abundance of caution, we don't want to be in a position where we're coming back again, or the Girl Scouts are coming back again. So we're here now. We've taken in all this information and preparing for this hearing and responding to your question, which we heard today from the dais, virtual dais, that we think that 3 years would really kind of give that appropriate cover based on the circumstances we're facing at the site.
No other questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Geraldo? You are muted. You're muted.
Who is Brookfield Washington LLC? Are they going to be the contract purchasers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically, what you're asking is try to increase the value of the land for the Girl Scouts, right?
No, we're asking for certainly the
Hey, wait a minute. Whoa, hold up. Basically, what you're saying is you need the extension so that the value of the contribution to the Girl Scouts, because they're not going to develop it, right?
They're not going to develop the land
Right.
presently. They're looking to sell it. Yes.
Right. Okay. So you've got a preliminary plan of subdivision that was granted 28 years ago. 28 years ago. And now you want an additional 6-year extension because the Girl Scouts couldn't develop it? I got to agree with staff on that. This is extraordinary request. And I haven't seen why we should, I'm concerned about what happens at the preliminary plan of subdivision. You do different types of studies, and now 28 years later, those studies are still in effect. And so, I don't know. But anyway, that's number one. Number two is, so how realistic is it that the railroad is going to build a tunnel, or that the proposed developer is going to build a tunnel?
It requires further discussion and investigation. The previous developer, my understanding, had advanced plans for a bridge tunnel that was subject to final approval by CSX, but that was before the donation. We think we can revive those discussions and see that through to completion. And with regards to the reasons why we're here, we feel that the reasons why we're here is to obtain an extension that we feel qualifies. Understand that the board has the discretion to determine what diligence means, but from the perspective of the Girl Scouts, and they'll testify to it, they performed all reasonable diligence in our opinion to be entitled to move this forward. The age of the preliminary plan is what it is. That predates our involvement with it. And they obtained every extension that was legally available to them at the time. They qualified for it. So I can't speak to that, but I do recognize your point. I will say, with at least with regards to transportation and studies, since this is a valid preliminary plan, or at least it was 4 weeks ago, every other preliminary plan that comes after this has to use, in the same scoping area, has to use the traffic generated theoretically from this phase 1 as part of the background for their traffic study. Our transportation study is a cumulative, or at least the current test is a cumulative test. So, so there has been consideration for what this project would mean in terms of generation of traffic for everything else that came after it. We're looking to, again, finalize it, put in our portion of it and move forward. But I know I went farther than what your question asked, but that's
fine. All the information you could give me only will help me in making a decision. But is there any background? Do you have any letter? I didn't see any, and I may have missed it, from CSX saying that it's under consideration putting the tunnel?
I don't have anything in the record specifically that shows anything current, because I don't think there is a current agreement for the placement of that tunnel. But there was advancement of that. Mr. Ken Dunn is on the line, and if and I don't mean to put him on the spot, but I'm going to put him on the spot. Mr. Dunn with Soltes was also involved with the previous developer, Lake Marlton. He may have some further insight on that. So if I could yield to him,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Okay. All right. Hold on a second. Before we go, let's give you a chance, Mr. Dunn, to gather your information if you have some to gather. But before we do that, and I know that Commissioner Giraldo may or may not be finished with his questions. He may have more, or he may have some additional ones depending on what Mr. Dunn has to say. But obviously you can see already we're grappling with this. So you're hearing different comments already from the board members. I do want to point out something that Mr. Antonetti said, that when we talk about traffic and people say, wait a minute, you're still relying on old traffic counts and whatnot. We still, every other, and this is really important when we do an analysis of traffic and in accordance with our traffic guidelines. Every time a subdivision is approved, whether or not it's built, that background traffic is counted in all successive preliminary plans. So it's not, so the traffic generated is accounted for, and I just want to point that out as well. And while we don't know which way this is going, and while I bet you dollars to donuts, and I say bet figuratively, there is a tugging at our heart because of Girl Scouts. We all have an affinity of Girl Scouts. I have my own special one, but at the same time, as Commissioner Dorner said, we can't base our decision solely on that. But the other thing I do want to point out is that and Mr. Antonetti, correct me if I'm wrong, while this subdivision was approved in '94, the Girl Scouts didn't acquire it until, did you say December of 2018?
18.
18, yes, ma'am.
2018. So it's that it wasn't in their hands all that time, and so there was some activity. The question, as Mr. Antonetti detailed quite extensively, there was a lot of activity that was going on, and I guess the question will remain after we hear from Mr. Dunn and we hear from others, and then we hear from our staff, Mr. Diaz Campbell again. The question will fall to us to determine whether that is whether they have pursued it diligently. So, and that will be a finding of fact for us, for our determination. So I just wanted to throw that out there now before we turn to Mr. Dunn to try to respond. Okay. From the CSX.
Hot now.
You are up, Mr. Dunn.
It's good to see you all again. It's been a little bit. So we did diligently and dutifully pursue conversations with the railroad tracks, and we came to an agreement with them as to the engineering and the location and the impact regarding that crossing. After quite a bit of energy and effort were expended to get everybody on the same page, and that agreement was valid for quite some time up through the property transfer back in 2018, 2019. But I haven't since looked at it since then. So there was, a lot of effort expended to get everybody to agree on the engineering for something that was quite complicated.
But was there a written agreement?
Yeah, there was written documentation back and forth between us and the track owners.
I know, but you said that there was an agreement. My question to you, Mr. Dunn, was there a written agreement?
Yes, I believe that the language in the yes. The answer is yes.
Okay, do you know why it wasn't submitted for us to consider this? Because I'm presumably, if there was an agreement before, it would persist now. So I can't understand why the written agreement is not part of the record.
Well, it's just a question.
It would help me to understand where it's going.
Question of putting our hands on it, and because it's been a little bit of time since we looked at it, we didn't think it was. I don't think we thought it was as important as maybe it's turning out to be.
If I could, Mr. Dunn stated too, I believe the agreement expired. So the fact that there was an agreement, that shows that one can be reached, and we feel confident because there was one in the past. This is from Brookfield's perspective. Another one can replace it, utilizing the same terms in engineering, provided that this is extended and we move forward.
Okay. I just think it would have been good part of the record, would have been more substantiation as to where it would, I agree with you. If they did it before, it's a good likelihood they would do it again. But for us to see the terms of it. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Giraldo. So, Mr. Antonetti, did you want Mr. Hatcher to go next?
Yes, Madam Chair, that would be appropriate, and then I'll ask him to call up just a few other individuals to speak on the Girl Scouts' behalf, please.
Okay. Okay, somewhere in here we're going to take a 5-minute nature break, but we'll if now is a good time, fine, or we can do it after Mr. Hatcher or whoever Mr. Hatcher calls up. So how about we just go forward with Mr. Hatcher now?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Chris Hatcher with the law firm C.L. Hatcher, LLC, here on behalf of the property owner, Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital. Again, would like to echo some of Mr. Antonetti's comments about the staff report. Truly appreciative of staff's time and effort on the report, although we do fundamentally disagree with the recommendation. I'm going to try to keep my comments relatively brief and focus on 2 issues. And then I would like to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Council, Ms. Soto Harmon. First point I'd like to make is the statute 24119 D6B2, a reasonableness standard sort of has to be read into it. And to one of Commissioner Dorner's comments, it's important to know, the request isn't just because we're the Girl Scouts, give us more time. We say that we acknowledge that the Girl Scouts aren't sophisticated real estate developers, just to provide context to that reasonableness standard and what standard the actions and the efforts that have been made should be evaluated. As everybody knows, the Girl Scouts are a philanthropic organization focused on empowering young ladies. And so when taken who they are and what they are in light of their candidly lack of knowledge about real estate, the actions that they did take during the time once ownership was memorialized, which was depending on when you think the title was transferred, is either late 2018 or early 2019. Those actions end up being what their efforts for diligence were during that time. So what are those actions, and what diligent actions did they take? Staff seems to point out in the report, they focus on public approvals. And this is the second point. public approvals. What approvals did you have? What detailed site plans, permits, bonding, plans? And those are, and Mr. Antonetti went through some of those that were on the property when they acquired it. And candidly, we're on the property up until 4 weeks ago. But I've worked in real estate subdivisions in Prince George's County for quite a while. And what I can share, and I think what should resonate with most attorneys, real estate attorneys at least, is that before the public entitlement process begins, there's usually private transactions, agreements, actions that are taken that are diligently pursuing the development before the public entitlement process. And there's typically private transactions, actions, decisions that are made after the approval of the public entitlement process. And both the public and the private actions that are taken are essential in order to push the development forward in a diligent manner. Some might say that the private are just as important as the public. So what did the Girl Scouts do? Before they acquired the property, they ran assessments on the property to make sure that it would have some value if they accepted it. After they obtained the property, they engaged with brokers. They hired through agents. They worked with some local real estate professionals. They hired people like me. They worked with Brookfield, who's ultimately asking for the request before you today. These are all very essential and very mindful actions of diligence taken by that would need to be taken by any developer or any property owner in that situation. Now, one of the things that the staff outlines in the staff report, is I'm going to read it on page 4. Staff finds that it is the fault of the prior developer, LMLP, that the project has not been completed within the validity timeframe, as they donated the property to a property owner unable to and uninterested in continuing the process of development. Putting aside the comments talking about completing the project within the validity time period, because I don't necessarily think that's the question before the board. It's whether diligence was done to complete the development. I think that the actions that the council performed show clear interest in continuing development. When they accepted the property, it was always their intention to continue the real estate subdivision on the property. That's why they retained the brokers. That's why they retained somebody like me. That's why they submitted 2 letters into the record in support of the request. That's why they're here to testify before this body to say that they are committed and desire to continue to diligently pursue the residential subdivision on the property. It's really hard to create something, even for super sophisticated developers. It's really hard to assemble a team. It's really hard to find a partner. It's really hard to create something. And with the limitation, understanding who they are and that reasonableness standard of what they did, the actions that they took since they own the property are clear indications, clearly show that they pursued the approval of this development in a diligent manner. To summarize, we believe that the Girl Scouts did proceed in a diligent manner to complete the development and proceeded at a pace that a reasonable philanthropic organization would have done on this extraordinarily complicated case. With that, I'd like to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Girl Scouts, Ms. Soto Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Hatcher. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair Hewlett and Commissioners Bailey, Dorner, Geraldo, and Washington for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Lydia Soto Harmon. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Girl Scouts of the nation's capital. We are the largest Girl Scout council in the country. We have over 70,000 members, and I'm very proud to say that in Prince George's County, we have over 4,000 members and 200 troops including faith-based communities like Metropolitan Baptist Church, where we have been active for over 85 years, and the Hearts of Church Ministries, and Mount Enon Baptist. And I know that we have lots of Girl Scout friends who, at minimum, if nothing else, have been buying Girl Scout cookies for a very long time. So I thank you for that. I come before you today to ask for an extension for the development approvals that really expired at the end of last year, 4 weeks ago. We really did record the deed in 2019. So even though the property was really sold at the end of December of 2018, it really was 2019. As you can imagine, we were thrilled with this generous donation, as it has the potential to provide us with resources to enable us to continue to deliver much needed programming for girls in Prince George's County and our entire council for generations to come. And I will also admit, as you've heard today, that we are novices in the land development arena. We communicated to our members from the get-go that this land would be sold with the intention of enabling us to provide a legacy of Girl Scouting for girls across the council. Like many nonprofits, we were suddenly and unexpectedly forced by the pandemic in early 2020 to focus on the needs of our members, from the mental health of our girls to the delivering our program. Troops could not meet in person, so we pivoted. We hosted over 43,000 virtual meetings during the pandemic. We needed to focus on ensuring that our council remained strong. Last year, we had a fall off on our cookie sales that impacted us greatly, as we were not able to do booths around the council. So our singular focus was on our core mission, and it did delay our ability to start the process for looking for a broker and a buyer for the Marlton land. But as soon as the pandemic appeared to be improving, before Omicron set us back again, we pivoted quickly, and we have moved very expeditiously since then to engage a broker and to find a suitable buyer. Today, I want you to see the proof that Girl Scouting works and that your consideration is imperative for us to sell this land at a good price. I would like to introduce you to Gold Award Girl Scout Jordan Partlow. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I say a Girl Scout is the best way to tell our story. Jordan?
Hi, thank you, Ms. Lydia, for inviting me to speak today. My name is Jordan Parlow, and I have been a Girl Scout since I was 5 years old. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today about how important Girl Scouting has been to me and some of my friends in Prince George's County. For 13 years, I have been a part of the same troop, Troop 6486 in Glendale, Maryland, which is in Service Unit 22-6 in Prince George's County. My mom has been my leader, just as she has been a leader for my 3 older sisters. I've made lifelong friends while experiencing all that the troop and Girl Scouts has to offer. As a younger Girl Scout, I participated in camp every summer, learning to enjoy all the outdoor activities offered, such as swimming, kayaking, canoeing, and hiking. Over the years, as a Girl Scout, I have developed leadership skills. Our troop has had several experiences leading younger troops. For instance, we were camp counselors at Camp Wonderland, which was a spring break camp in Bowie and Hyattsville, designed to expose younger girls to Girl Scouts. Also, we led a Daisy Browning troop primarily from Gaywood Elementary in Lanham, which reminded us of when we were younger, and we created many fun activities which included learning the Girl Scout promise and law, being active, and eating snacks. We have sold lots of cookies over the years at booths all over Prince George's County, the proceeds from which have enabled us to have some incredible experiences. We have traveled to places like Savannah, Martha's Vineyard, New York a couple times, and Hershey Park, and we're planning a trip to Europe this summer. Scholarship money awarded to me by the Girl Scout Council of the nation's capital has enabled me to have some of these wonderful experiences. In terms of service, my troop has done so much that it's hard to even know where to begin. Some of my favorite activities included renovating a shelter for abused women and their children through my girlfriend's house in Capitol Heights, and visiting Villa Rosa in Bowie to make flower bouquets with repurposed flowers from weddings and funerals. When we were younger, we would visit the Arbor Terrace nursing home to sing Christmas carols with residents. For many years, my troop has been responsible for feeding guests through warm nights at St. George's Church in Glendale and Safe Haven at St. John's Church in Beltsville. We have earned the dinner party badge and provided the guests with white tablecloth service with menus, place settings, and all. Through earning my bronze, silver, and silver trefoil awards, I provided over 350 hours of service. In March, I earned my gold award for my project, which was called Now You're Speaking My Language, which focused on the importance of learning foreign languages and becoming a global citizen. My interest and appreciation for languages was developed by attending Dora Kennedy French Immersion, formerly known as Robert Goddard, which is a school in Greenbelt where I learned all subjects exclusively in French from kindergarten through 8th grade. I also took 3 years of Russian at the same school and studied Spanish for several years as well. Building on my love of languages, Girl Scouts has taught me to be adventurous and to try new experiences. I also have learned to appreciate different cultures, both in school and in my Girl Scout troop. One participant in my presentation was awarded a prize that I offered from my cookie earnings. She will be receiving the fees to pay for her to get a passport so that she can experience traveling and studying abroad. Girl Scouts has been a very important part of my life. It has provided me incredible opportunities, experiences, and life lessons. And I plan to continue being of the movement forever as a lifetime member. So far, I have been accepted to 7 colleges, and I am looking forward to my college journey. However, Girl Scouts will always be with me as I find new ways to be involved as a young adult while in college and beyond. I will do anything I can to help ensure that Girl Scouting remains available to girls in Prince George's County forever. That's why I'm missing school to be here today. Back to you, Miss Lydia.
No, hold on a second. Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan. I just wanted to, and on behalf of everyone, we do want to thank you. I need to say this because I have to protect the record in a case. And we have to, and the testimony has to be germane to the issues before us, which right now is whether you meet the criteria for the diligence and proceeding diligently to in furtherance of getting to a final plat. However, Ms. Jordan is a young student, and we allowed her leeway here that we don't normally allow, and that we can't normally allow, but we did allow her leeway, and she did extraordinarily well in her presentation. So we do want to commend you on that and all your activities with the Girl Scouts, and congratulations on being accepted to 7 colleges. That is extremely awesome. So much success to you in all of your days to come. So it's very important, but I have to make that distinction in terms of what we are allowed to consider in terms of our decision. But we do appreciate your coming here today, Ms. Jordan. Okay, and now you can go to school. Okay, okay.
Jordan. Thank you for your words. I just wanted to paint a picture for the commissioners. Madam Chair, we hope that we thank you for the opportunity to allow us to address you today. My sincere hope is that you will consider our request and that we will be granted an extension for the development approvals requested. I know that together we can make the world a better place, and I'm very grateful for Jordan for being with us this morning too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Mr. Hatcher, did you have someone else you wanted to call? Or is this, because I need to take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back.
We have no one else who'd like to call at this point. I would just like to cap it off by saying that considering who the property owner is and their level of sophistication when it comes to real estate matters, it's just they proceeded in a diligent manner to make sure that the development could go forward, since they acquired the property and had control of the property. And that diligence isn't just reflected in any of the public approvals, but also the private actions. It's really important that it's understood that in any transactions, as most lawyers can attest, there are oftentimes public approvals that are needed, but any number of private actions and transactions that show diligence in obtaining that development.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we will come back. So if you're done, we're going to take our break 5 to 10 minutes. Let's say, so how about 5 minutes to noon? And I know some of you are hungry. I know who you are. But so we're going to take our 10-minute break though and come back, and then we'll try to wrap this up If we're not finished by 1, we're taking lunch. Okay? Deal. All right. 10-minute break. 11:55, we'll be back. Four commissioners back. I just want to check on Commissioner Giraldo. While we're doing that, let's see if everyone is here. Okay, we have Mr. Antonetti. Let's check on Mr. Hatcher. We have Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Okay. See you, Mr. Hatcher. Just need a minute or so for Commissioner Giraldo. Mr. Antonetti, can you tell if your team is present? Mr. Horn, are you on?
I'm present. I'm present.
Okay, Mr. Ferrante?
Present, thank you.
Mr. Dunn? We'll come back to Mr. Dunn. We see you, Ms. Soto Harmon. Okay. I guess Ms. Parlo may be gone. Yes, I said Neil Patel, right?
Present, yes, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And then Commissioner Giraldo, I need. He's back. Oh, there you are. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so we had to take a much needed nature break. Now, Mr. Hatcher, you were done with calling whomever you wish to call. Is that correct? Well, let me just say, back in session, we're still considering item 6, which is extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-93078 Marlton, sections 18 through 22. So yes, you said, Mr. Hatcher, you were done?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Antonetti, I don't know if you're done with your case in chief or whether you need to go to someone else at this point.
Madam Chair, I've called everybody that wishes to participate. If I could just give a closing sentence or two.
You can give a sentence or two, and then you have the opportunity to close in the end as well, because we'll go back to our staff now to see what they have to say in response to your.
Well, then let me just do it now.
Okay.
I think for summary purposes. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is, again, Robert Antonetti, for the record, the law firm of Shipley & Horn. On behalf of Brookfield Properties, we do urge your support of an extension. I would like to proffer a 3-year extension as a modification to the 6-year request that was made. Again, I explained on the record the reason for that change. We feel that will be adequate time for us to move forward, and we don't want to be in a position where we have to ask for an extension again. With regards to the staff recommendation, again, I think enormous respect for Mr. Diaz-Campbell. He's been very collaborative. He's given us the opportunity to supplement our initial request with additional information. Based on the staff report, I think primarily focuses on the inability of the previous owner to complete development. We have stated today that for purposes of the criteria of approval on 24-119, developers should be the Girl Scout Council. And you've heard testimony today as to what efforts they've made and whether those efforts, really the question is, does that represent diligence based on a reasonable person standard in their position? Their diligence has been to, accept the property, negotiate a gift agreement with provisions for the previous developer to maintain bonds, to do their investigations, make sure the property was worthy to be accepted. COVID hit. It has changed everything. I'm meeting you personally today because it's still not appropriate yet under the state of emergency for all us to be in the same room. That has had an impact. The council has recognized that through CB 74 2020. There is light at the end of the tunnel, as there always is. In the end, everything will be okay. And if everything's not okay, it's not the end. But we're getting closer to the end of this. And values of our homes are going up. Despite things going on in the economy, there's a demand that translates to values. The values will help offset and justify, we believe, the exorbitant infrastructure costs that have been a pariah, 10,000-pound weight on this project. So we urge you, please, to exercise your discretion, to look at the section and interpret diligence in a manner that is befitting the property owner that's before you. Again, we respectfully request an extension of 3 years to allow for all of us to obtain the approvals we need to make this project, this final section of Marlton, East Marlton, the East Marlton, not this section, but East Marlton as a whole, a reality. So for that, I do appreciate your patience and indulgence in allowing the testimony that's been brought to you today, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. I do want to say two things I need to do. I meant to ask the board if they had any questions of Mr. Hatcher, number one, and number two, you know, the standard is the standard that you have. The criteria is the criteria that you have to meet, regardless of whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. I appreciate your efforts, your collaborative spirit, and your willingness to come up with a lesser time frame of 3 years. And I think that's what Commissioner Dorner was seeking as more palatable. The only thing I would say to that is that A, we still have to meet the standard, and B, I'm hoping that if that's the way this board goes, that you're really picking a time that you can live with. Because if you have to come back, you know, after this, if it goes in your favor, then that may be problematic. So just make sure that you're picking a time that you could live with. I now want to see that, I want to see if any of the board members, because we'll turn to our staff after this. We're going to turn to Mr. Diaz-Campbell. But I first want to see if the commissioners have any questions of Mr. Hatcher. So I'm going to start with Madam Vice Chair. You're muted.
I have no questions for Mr. Hatcher.
Thank you. Commissioner Washington?
Can't hear you.
You're fuzzy. We can hear you a little bit, but you're fuzzy. Okay, so your camera will be off to enhance your, the sound quality, but the record reflects that Commissioner Washington is indeed present with us. Okay. Commissioner Dorner?
Yeah.
Not so well yet, Commissioner Washington, but maybe give it a minute. Okay, well, I'll go to Commissioner Dorner for the moment.
Okay. Yeah, it might be for Mr. Hatcher, maybe it's for Mr. Antonetti. I'd say that I appreciate Mr. Hatcher's framing of the issues, that producing anything is really tough, especially with real estate development. Like, sometimes it's just kind of a guess, and you have to be right time, right place. For this property that I think, so I may be wrong, but I think the original approvals were like 1994. It was almost like 30 years ago to some extent. I would guess that the traffic study was done at that point, and we don't have anything. Because I'm thinking ahead. Like, if we give you guys an approval for 3 years, we're going to get swarmed with people coming in and complaining about the traffic study and whether or not that's relevant, and it's just going to be a complete headache at the next hearing that we have on this case. So if we do go with the 3-year extension, do you have a more current traffic study, or could you do a more current traffic study? Because to me, that's like just one of the public concerns that we always hear about. And if we approve something that's like almost 3 decades old, we're going to be swarmed with 100 people like sitting in these public testimonies later on. And that would be something that you could get ahead of down like immediately, basically, to proffer to do. And then you'd have all the other kind of vested rights that would come with the prior plans. And I realize we probably can't, now defer to legal counsel, we probably can't actually require this, but we also don't have to approve this. And if we were to say no, you would have to do it anyways. So I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Hatcher or Mr. Antonetti, you can comment on when a traffic study was done, or maybe make that proffer or something else to kind of help us get there.
This is Chris Hatcher. I think that's probably a question more appropriate for the contract purchaser. So I'd like to pass that to Mr. Antonetti.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the question. So the traffic report, I will incorporate some of my earlier comments regarding the traffic study that was done. It did, pass an adequacy test. The trips were established then. They will continue. They have been shown as background in any other project, so it's already been incorporated. But I hear where you're going. So in order to move forward with this one phase, there will be a detailed site plan. A detailed site plan, which typically doesn't look at trip caps and traffic beyond the four corners of the plan. That may not be the most acceptable situation. However, there is a phase 2 of East Marlton. Phase 2 will require a completely a new preliminary plan, which will not only count phase 1 as background, but all new traffic generated from phase 2. So it will be a brand new test, brand new adequacy findings. So this is part of a whole, this preliminary plan here, which was tested. I know that's not a perfect answer. This is kind of an imperfect fact pattern that we're dealing with. But with the approvals that we have before us, a detailed site plan, we certainly will look at internal intersections and Heather Morris connection. The offsites will be carried forward through the second preliminary plan, which would come after this, which then also includes the extension of Heather Moore, but all offsites, 301, et cetera. But for now, I think we have to rely on the plan's findings. As old as they are, they have been carried forward, and they should resonate through subsequent preliminary plans in the same scoping area because it had to be included as background. So that would be our response to that. But we look forward to bringing forward an additional application, a preliminary plan for phase 2, which is a larger section than this, and it will certainly test all those trips for phase 2 and include everything in phase 1 as background again to look at everything. So that issue isn't lost on us and will be looked at in greater detail at that time, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. Commissioner Warner, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah. Well, the phase 2 then, yes, I appreciate the background and it's all you have. Like it has to be what you rely on legally. Will the phase 2 incorporate this section then and all the areas? So it's not like we're just taking a subset of this and kind of cutting out a different part, like it would be encompassing of the whole area?
No, phase 2 would be the balance of the 400 and so acre tract. So this is 181 acres. So that part would be held out. Our goal is to finalize the situation, move forward. Have these sections platted under development, creating the energy and momentum to carry forward to section 2 and have that approved through the appropriate applications thereafter.
And when do you think that phase 2 will come before us? If you're just at a random guess, is this in the next year, 2 years, or would this be the next 5 years?
No, we think that I'll go out on a limb here, but I believe in the next couple years that we'll have this in place. I mean, the preliminary plan is foundational, for phase 2, but I believe 2 years at the most. We want to get those foundational approvals underway, so then we can start focusing on the details and the detailed site plans for these neighborhoods and these other sections, what they'll look like. So I would say within 2 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just for the record, I'll note that Mr. Hatcher shaved his November beard as well. So we're on good form now. Both of us.
But I like the hair. But okay. So I'm going to turn to Commissioner Giraldo in a second too. But before I do that, I have to speak up at this point because I have a fundamental problem with the new traffic study, with the request for a new traffic study. They comported with the law when the traffic study was done, and it's approved, it's valid, and it opens up a whole can of worms for us to require people to do new traffic studies. Granted, you're right, Commissioner Dorner, we don't have to approve this extension request, but to make it contingent, and I'm not saying that you said this, but I don't want to make it contingent upon a new traffic study. Because the traffic for this, I mean, for all the reasons that Mr. Antonetti said, for all the reasons that are set forth in our guidelines for the analysis of traffic impacts, this traffic has been factored into every other subdivision. It just opens up an entire Pandora's box. And in the interest of fairness, I honestly don't think that's fair. That's me. That's my opinion. As former legal counsel, I have a fundamental problem with that one.
Yeah, I wasn't making it contingent. I was just wondering if there was going to be other opportunities down the road as they develop out this area that they would be doing additional traffic studies. And it sounds like the answer is yes to that.
The answer is yes to that. And plus, you do look at the circulation and whatnot at the detailed site plan stage. So, okay. So now I'm going to turn to Commissioner Giraldo.
Well, I'm not going to make it a condition, but I am concerned about the traffic. And the reason is it's 28 years old, and I can't tell you the countless number of times when they come in with specific design plans that residents come in and complain about the traffic. And what do we tell them? Oh, well, you're here at the wrong stage. You should have come at the preliminary plan of subdivision. And so then they look at us like, well, what are you guys doing? We're telling you about the traffic problem. And what I can't understand is why, if they really want this extension, why they can't compromise in some respect. That's my concern. Are the citizens that are going to come before us and complain about traffic, and we're going to say, oh, you should have been here 28 years ago. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So,
okay, I will say I disagree with you. I understand the concern. I agree with the concern, but the concern is that traffic has been counted for all of those years. That traffic has been counted in every subsequent preliminary plan of subdivision. So that, regardless of how we vote on the extension, yay or nay, that traffic has been counted. And I am fundamentally opposed to just having people come in and do a new traffic study when legally they have met all the tests for that. And we certainly don't ask people to proffer anything, because then it ain't a proffer if we ask for it. So I just have a fundamental problem with that. Although I thoroughly agree with you in terms of the questions that were raised, but the traffic study was done way back when, and it was calculated in every single subsequent preliminary plan of subdivision that was approved since 1994, since that date in 1994. So so that part is extraordinarily germane as well. And then as was indicated to Mr. Commissioner Dorner, and as so acknowledged in his response just now, there will be the next phase of Marlton that will come in that will require a new traffic study. And on this one, there will be a detailed site plan which addresses some other aspects of transportation. So even on this particular site, if the vote is to approve the extension. Okay.
Also, I'm not inclined, just based on what I heard, to go 6 years. I'm not even sure I'm inclined to go 3 years, based upon what I've heard thus far.
Okay. All right. So, but we're going to hear from everybody. I'm going to go back to see if Mr. Diaz-Campbell has anything else to say in response, and then we can ask all of our questions of anybody, and then on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Antonetti, in accordance with our rules, the planning board rules of procedure, the applicant closes out, so Mr. Antonetti will close out. So for now, I'm going to go to Mr. Diaz-Campbell or anybody else that you may wish on the commission side, Mr. Diaz-Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to provide a rebuttal to some of the points that Mr. Antonetti and Mr. Hatcher have given today. So the first question I want to address is the question of what is diligence and who the developer is. So we can't really consider who exactly the developer is. There's the contract purchaser or the property owner or the person who's going to do the actual development. The code just talks about the developer. So because of that, we can't just look at the diligence over the past 2 years. We do have to look at diligence over the whole lifetime of the project. And what that shows is, in spite of the very long list of approvals that Mr. Antonetti mentioned, there just hasn't been that moving forward. The majority of the approvals that were given in the past have now expired, and they were spread out really over a much longer period of time than they should have, given that typically for projects, given that the expectation originally was that they'll be done within 6 years, a 6-year validity period. So that's partly due to the market, but I'll get to that, the question of the market in a minute. The code specifies that it has to be due diligence to complete the development. So while we did consider both the actions of LMLP and the Girl Scout Council, what the Girl Scout Council did was certainly diligence of a sort, but it was diligence in pursuit of selling the property. Their goal, to perhaps put more crudely, was to get it out of their own hands, so that they could make a lot of money from it. That's certainly maybe a noble goal considering what the Girl Scouts do, but it's still tangential to the goal of developing the property. So that is why we as staff did not consider it due diligence in pursuit of developing the property specifically. Now, second thing I want to address is the traffic study and what the preliminary plan question required. So even if you consider that the traffic study is current because as all the other preliminary plans in the area that have occurred since then referenced it, traffic isn't the only thing that we look at with a preliminary plan subdivision. There's lots of other adequacy provisions related to utility extensions, schools, environmental regulations. The environmental regulations have changed significantly in the past few decades, and there's a big stream and wetland crossing that's needed to get into the site, as Mr. Antonetti mentioned. Maybe that crossing needs a second look, and you're certainly.
But Mr. Diaz-Campbell, the issue before us, whether those things they were valid, they got valid approvals, and some things may have changed in the interim. But the question now before us, and so maybe I need Mr. Goldsmith. The question now before us is whether they have proceeded in a diligent manner to comply, or whether they have been unable through no fault of the developer to complete the development within the time frame specified. So that is the section that I'm looking at. The change is irrelevant for purposes of this discussion. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. Either we grant the extension, or we don't grant the extension based on what we perceive to be their efforts. But just like as much as we love the Girl Scouts, and it touched our hearts completely. As a former Girl Scout, it touched my heart completely. But that is not a factor for us here. And whether the laws changed in the interim, that is not a factor for us either. The factor is, have they been proceeding diligently? And unless Mr. Goldsmith tells me differently.
Well, all right, I understand that. So I'll get back then to the question of has the applicant been proceeding diligently? Okay. So one thing that the applicant has mentioned repeatedly is that right now the market is ready for this to move forward. that means that they spent a great deal of time just waiting while it has not been ready to move forward. And part of that is due to COVID-19, which is accounted for, and the recession, which is accounted for by the other legislative extensions. But on the one hand, the council is saying by not giving more legislative extensions that's not a factor anymore. And even well before the recession, a great deal of time was spent waiting as well. The act of getting all these public approvals and the private actions as well, all of those together just don't take 27 years. So therefore, a lot of it has just been spent waiting for the market to improve. Now, they're saying now that it is ready to move forward, and I'm not a real estate developer, so I won't dispute their calculations. But if they're wrong, then there's the question of how much longer they'll be waiting. Will it be 6 years? Will it be 12? Like, what if the market turns down again? Like, certainly the actions of the real estate market are out of the applicant's control, but they can't, or they shouldn't just rely on that as their reasoning for why moving forward is not out of their control, because the intent of the preliminary plan and regulations is not to let a preliminary plan of subdivision just continue on indefinitely until such time as the market is ready for it. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Okay, so Mr. Goldsmith, I had indicated I was going to turn to you. Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is Peter Goldsmith, Senior Counsel, for the record. I just want to just make it real clear what the standard is, since I think we've heard various comments as to what the board needs to consider. I think there were comments as to what to words that can be read into the standard, and whether the standard is either subjective or objective. The standard is on the bottom of page 3 of the staff report. It is section 24-119 D6 B Romanet 2, and just so the board has it in front of them.
Okay, wait a minute. What page? Bottom of page what? 4?
Page 3 of the staff report.
3. Okay, got it. Okay.
And it's Romanet 2.
What page was that again, Madam Chair?
3.
Thank you.
And I can read it in. The standard is: the developer has been proceeding in a diligent manner to complete the development and has been unable, through no fault of the developer, to complete development within the timeframe specified.
Okay.
I have a question.
So that's the finding that we have to make. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Geraldo?
And what, Mr. Goldsmith, thank you. And that's what I had been focusing on. But who is the developer?
Well, I think it's appropriate to consider, or to tack on the property. I think the developer has changed throughout the history of this project, and I think it's appropriate to tack on all the owners and the applicants and everybody who's been involved with this project as who the developer is. I mean, it doesn't distinguish between someone who's a property owner and not a developer, and somebody who is an actual developer. So I think since the Girl Scout organization became the property owner, we would have to consider them as the developer, or whether and consider their diligence in pursuing the development.
Is that it for you, Commissioner Geraldo?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so if the board doesn't have any other questions of Mr. Goldsmith at this time, I'm going to I will look to see if anyone else has any questions of Mr. Goldsmith, and if not, I will turn to Mr. Antonetti. So let's see if any of our board members have any questions of our council. Vice Chair Bailey?
Madam Chair, I don't have questions, but you did indicate earlier in reference to the Ms. Jordan that spoke. I really do have to make a comment about her, which has no bearing whatsoever on this case. You made that perfectly clear. But as a former Girl Scout in 1940, when Girl Scouts were still segregated, and when my first experience in an integrated setting was with the Girl Scouts, and to have that beautiful, brilliant, clearly intelligent young lady who's been accepted into 7 different colleges, I have to acknowledge that she was before me today. And my heart leaps with joy just seeing her. It has nothing to do with this case whatsoever, but at my stage, at my age, and my experience, I have to acknowledge the beauty and the brilliance of the young lady who spoke with us today, before us today. So I know I have no questions.
Thank you so very much, Madam Vice Chair. Commissioner Washington, any questions of our council? And you'll get to make other comments when we vote, but any questions of Peter Goldsmith at this time?
I have no questions, but I also must associate myself with Madam Vice Chair comments and also say that it has nothing to do with this case at all.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Doerner, any questions of Mr. Goldsmith?
No questions, but since we're on the bandwagon, I'll do the same thing. My son is at DKFI, and if he could follow in the footsteps of that young lady and be as successful as she has, and hopefully learn French and then maybe Russian, that would be awesome. Like, she's doing a great job. So please, Mrs. Soto Harmon, like, send our great thanks to her for having testified. It's really nice to see those kinds of the youth come before us and speak, even if it doesn't have to do with like the issues at hand or what we can consider. When they are such well-spoken and products of our public school system and products of other NGOs and groups around the county, that's fantastic to see, because we're, as a county, we're doing the right thing to bring up the youth and lead them in those kinds of ways. So apart from any decision that happened today, I'm very happy to see that.
Thank you, Commissioner Doerner. Commissioner Geraldo, you asked your questions of council, but did you have any others?
No, I just wanted to concur in the comments of my fellow commissioners. And while I wasn't a Girl Scout, I was a Cub Scout. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Antonetti, you are on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody. I also want to echo the sentiments of Ms. Partlow and her achievements and what she said. As a father of 2 Girl Scouts myself, I know the program has improved their lives, their confidence, their ability to be upstanding citizens, and Ms. Partlow is no exception. It exceeds the rule. She's phenomenal. Making presentations in a public setting is hard. This is hard. This case is hard. There's points in here that have been made. Again, I great respect to staff, but we respectfully disagree. The question of diligence, as Mr. Goldsmith said, there is a subjective element in it. I will state that I think you do have to look at who the developer is, and for this case, it is the Girl Scout. And did they take reasonable steps? We respectfully state that they did. Completing development is hard as well. I mentioned the $27 million entrance into the site. It's landlocked otherwise. That requires a capital partner. In some ways, I look at this request similar to some other requests that have been made to the board, where folks have said, hey, I've got a commercial site and I don't have a tenant, a spec-built tenant to build this out, to get to a site plan and then the plat. I need a little bit more time. The market has changed. Or maybe somebody's come and said, I don't have a lender. I don't have the capital to make this infrastructure. Well, this is really a capital call. Selling this property will bring on a partner, will bring on a capital partner or buyer who will have the wherewithal to make this work. The question was, well, what if the market isn't there? What if we're wrong? What if Brookfield's wrong? If we're wrong, the plan dies. It's over. We don't think we're wrong. We think that we're turning a corner nationally, economically, from a COVID standpoint. Housing demand is there. It's pent up. We want to be there to be able to meet that demand. And for all the reasons we stated in the testimony you've heard today, we respectfully request your support for what is now a modified 3-year extension request. So thank you for your deference today and willingness to hear us out. And again, we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the board has asked all the questions that it deemed appropriate to ask. If you have questions of Mr. Antonetti at this time, feel free. If not, we will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. And before so doing, I would just like to say just a couple words. And first, just to clarify my earlier comments. And what I mean is I want to be clear. It's not just because the Girl Scouts are a nonprofit. My point was, notwithstanding the fact that they are a nonprofit, and in my opinion, I think that they did undertake not only reasonable, but more than reasonable due diligence. And I'm just referencing a couple of points in their letter. I mean, the environmental assessments, the title reviews, consultation with real estate brokers, required bonding in place, etc. And I thank Mr. Hatcher for, quite frankly, really crystallizing that for me in his testimony and discussion of public approvals coupled with private actions and transactions as equally necessary to move a project forward. I would also say, and there have been a couple of comments with regards to, well, is this an attempt for the Girl Scouts to make more money or, get a better price point in terms of selling the property? Well, let me just say, having not only had a corporate career, but having run 2 nonprofits and still running one now, that's good fiscal stewardship, because a nonprofit does not make profit. So every dime that they get goes back into serving our community. And we've all talked about, we've all witnessed, what we saw here today in terms of how transformational this organization has been for this young woman. And it's not lost on me, some of the concerns that my colleagues have expressed, but I don't think that they're insurmountable. But I think on balance, especially because this is a judgment call for us, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the 3-year extension for preliminary plan 4-93078.
And I would second and associate myself with the comments made by Commissioner Washington.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Washington, seconded by Madam Vice Chair. Under discussion, I just want to make sure I heard your reasons. Commissioner Washington, I heard what you said about nonprofit and good fiscal stewardships and diligence. And diligence is a finding of fact for this board. We have to comply with the law. The law, as read into the record by our senior counsel, Mr. Goldsmith, requires proceeding in a diligent, the developer to proceed in a diligent manner.
And that's what I articulated at the beginning of the motion in terms of the assessments, the title reviews, I mean, all the steps. They're clearly articulated not only in the applicant exhibit number or the letter, the Girl Scout letter, but also, 2 letters. So for all of those, I would consider that, again, more than reasonable due diligence.
Thank you. Okay, and under discussion, I wanted to make sure that the record is clear on the due diligence aspects of it, of your motion, because that alters, those are different findings than what the staff has come up with. And I'm going to call, I will echo the sentiments. I called her Miss Jordan because by her first name. She did a spectacular job, but I will come back to that at the end of my comments. I want to hold my comments in abeyance. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Madam Vice Chair.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
Vote no.
Hewlett, I vote aye, and the motion carries 4-1. I do want to take a moment because I have to protect the record, in instances like this. This is an administrative hearing. We are not bound by the strict rules of evidence that is required in a court of law, but everything has to be relevant. And we do allow some leeway sometimes, but it still has to be relevant, but particularly in terms of a youth. So all of my colleagues commented on Ms. Jordan. She was fantastic. And though she tugged at my heart, I will freely admit it now, as an attorney and as the chair of this agency, I know that I can't make my decisions based on someone tugging at my heart, but I can make my decisions based on, and I can and do and always will make my decisions in terms of compliant with the law. And I do agree, as I so voted, that the applicants have shown due diligence. And when someone asked the question about who is the developer, well, the developer is all of the above, all of those people, because it changed hands a few times. So you have to add those things up. And I did take exception to, and I think Commissioner Washington addressed this too, about saying that we're waiting for the to get more money, and also just waiting. I can't, I thought that was a mischaracterization, saying they're just waiting. Because as Mr. Antonetti, and I wanted to add with Mr. Antonetti's comments, his presentation highlighted even more efforts today. So I wanted that in the findings, as well as everything that Commissioner Washington so indicated. And now that the case is over and it passed 4-1, I can now say I was a diehard member of Troop 4303 in New York City, and on my honor, I will do my duty to God and my country. And that changed a little bit since then, but I know my Girl Scout oath. But yeah, 4303, it changed a little bit, but that's the way it went. And I had my banner full of badges, and I went from Brownie to Girl Scout to Cadet. And I am so proud of Ms. Jordan. So, but I had to separate that from my legal decision. So that is why I reserved that comment until the end. Okay. So motion carries 4-0. Congratulations. You now have 3 years. You've cut it down from 6 years. You better do your job, because there's no coming back. Okay.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all of the support. Thank you.
And I am going to turn to okay, and thank you, Mr. Hatcher, everyone, but I'm going to turn, now listen, Ms. Soto Harmon, you're going to pass these comments on, right? To Jordan, okay.
Absolutely, we'll pass this on to Jordan. I'm running for Spelman, but it might be another university. We'll see.
Spelman would be wonderful. I'd like to hear that list, at some point, but anyway, that's wonderful. And I think Commissioner Dorner, well, everybody said it. I mean, Vice Chair Bailey, everybody said it. And Commissioner Dorner said, we love hearing about people, our youth in Prince George's County soaring like that. The news focuses on so many of the tragic things, and there are tragic things to report, but we have a lot of good in this county. And we have a lot of good young people who are doing well, who are soaring, and we better help them soar, because we're going to be, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for anybody else, but we're the old people, are going to be even the older people, and we're going to need these people to be our leaders. And so that's so critical. I am going to now turn to our Chief of Development Review, Mr. Hunt, and I'm going to ask him a critical question of the day. Mr. Hunt, is there any additional business to come before the Prince George's County Planning Board today?
There's no additional business before the Planning Board today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Board is adjourned. Before you all go, I have to reiterate my comments from earlier this morning. Please, everyone, take really good care. Stay safe. If you are not vaxxed up, masked up, boosted up, please do so for the safety of your loved ones, your colleagues, your grandmas, your little ones, everybody. We want everyone to be safe. And while you are at it, again, step up your game to be kind, because we have a lot of other stuff going on in this world, and kindness begets kindness. And if you think that one act or one thing can't make a difference, as the Dalai Lama said, try sleeping with a mosquito. So One small thing can make a huge difference. So with that, everyone have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
See ya. Bye-bye.